Are you a first responder, a veteran, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, or a Let's Go Blues radio listener? Of course you are. If you're in the market to buy or sell a home, call real estate superstar Mike Burgoyne today at 314-753-4060 or email him at mike@strikewithmike.com to earn special rates today.
A proven winner on the hockey rink, Joe Wolf knows what it takes to be the best. That's why he has the best rates in the area and only has rave reviews of his work with Wolf Power Washing. Get that siding back to its original color with Joe. Call him at 314-420-5434. That's 314-420-5434.
And starting on defense, from St. Charles, Missouri, number 94, Jeff Ponder.
Welcome to the original and longest-running Blues hockey podcast. This is Let's Go Blues Radio. This is the Steve Wagner episode, a.k.a. episode 49 of Season 13, and the 480th episode of all time. Support for Let's Go Blues Radio is brought to you in part by Mike Burgoyne of Real Brokerage Realty. Contact Mike at mike@strikewithmike.com or call him at 314-753-4060 and get started selling your current home or buying a new home today. And by Wolf Power Washing. If you're in the St. Louis area and need the services of a professional power washer, Joe Wolf is your guy. Call him at 314-420-5434 and get the best prices in the area. On today's show, Matt DeFranks stops by to discuss his career covering the NHL. That doesn't just include the St. Louis Blues. He's covered the Florida Panthers and Dallas Stars in his very short career. He is a younger man than you might realize if you don't follow him on social media and have seen him before. But he is the current beat writer, as I've said, for St. Louis Post-Dispatch, covers the St. Louis Blues. We discuss the recent prospect tournament as well as look forward to what the Blues may do this season. Obviously, a lot of roster updates in the past season or in the past off season. So we discuss them all and talk about what he thinks this team might do and where they might be, and he's got a lot of NHL knowledge. So nice having Matt on, first time on the show. So welcome to our small corner of Blues Nation, Matt DeFranks. Excited to have him here, and obviously we will be getting to that interview here in a minute, but there are some news to announce. First of all, I do want to mention the Stanley Ponder Cup Memorial Tournament. Haven't mentioned it in a while. Player signups are closed. We actually filled it this week. I don't want to say they're closed. If you are interested in playing still, I do recommend signing up for the waiting list. Currently, nobody is on the waiting list because, we usually have at least one or two people that can't make it, end up signing up, and then for whatever reason have to drop out either a week before, 2 weeks before, whatever. So if you're interested in playing, check it out over at dropinstl.com. Look for the tab on the right, top right, that says SPCMT Tourney. That is the Stanley Ponder Cup Memorial Tournament. Easy for me to say. Tab, and just go to sign up there. If you're wondering what this is, November 23rd, 2024, it starts at 11 a.m. It's at Midwest Sport Hockey in Baldwin, Missouri. It benefits, typically we benefit, they're not Be the Match anymore, whatever they're called now, but we are benefiting Evelyn Parks. She's the daughter of Jake Parks, who is a local hockey player, somebody I've played with for a very long time. She was diagnosed with leukemia late last year, so all proceeds are going to benefit Evelyn and her fight, which, by the way, she is killing. So, good on her for continuing that strong fight, and we're rooting for you, Evelyn. Tournament player fee is $60, but keep in mind, too, this is open to the public. We do raffles. We've got plenty of other stuff going on. There's a 50-50 draw. Even if you come in and buy a beer, that money, part of that will go towards Evelyn. So please mark your calendars, November 23rd. Make sure you come and watch some bad hockey and have a good time with us. Today is a monumental day. I'm recording this on Thursday, September 19th. Training camp has opened officially. You can find the full schedule of events on the Blues' website for the next 2 days. So, today, which this episode will air after, and then Friday. All events are during the day, and then preseason hockey on Saturday and Sunday night as well. They do have practices during the day as well if you want to go check those out on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, they play 6 p.m. at Dallas. On Sunday, they play 6 p.m. At Des Moines. So the Utah Coyotes, their first ever game is in Des Moines. That makes sense. So that is also the Blues, again, their second away game of the season. They will start playing at home again next week. So we are that close to hockey season, folks. Just some news out of Blues training camp from the past week. The Blues have added 6 players to their training camp roster. Forwards Nikita Alexandrov, Sam Bitten, and Matthew Pekka. Defenseman Scott Harrington and goaltender David Tendick. They're all here on professional tryouts. Forward Jake Goodell. He is coming on an amateur tryout. He actually played with the Blues in the recent prospect showcase. I asked Lou Korak, friend of the show, about his thoughts on seeing him play at the prospect tournament, and his response was, "I couldn't even tell you I noticed him." There's a lot of players at this prospect tournament, so I don't blame him for seeking out this undrafted player, but I thought just a funny response from Mr. Korak. I mentioned last week on our show that I was going to try to make it out for the Blues-Blackhawks game, and if not that, the Blues-Wild game. I ended up making the tournament at all, and I feel like a horrible Blues fan, to be quite honest, because I feel like we should have been out to support this prospect tournament coming here. It was the first time we've had it here, I don't want to say ever, but in my memory, I can't remember there ever being a prospect tournament here where the Blues hosted. So I felt bad missing it, but man, life got in my way. I had a serious car issue. I was without a car. I couldn't make it. It was unfortunate. I'm fine now, by the way. Car is fixed, and a couple grand later, woohoo. But still couldn't make it, so unfortunate. But I hope some of you made it, and if you did, let us know how it was. Was it run well? How were the games? I saw some clips, and they did share a lot of it on social media. So if you are interested in checking that out, the Blues played the Wild and the Blackhawks, and then the Wild and Blackhawks played each other on Saturday as well. So I'm hoping those were well attended. It was kind of hard to tell from what I saw on social media, but I'm sure it was. St. Louis is a nice hockey town. Couple notes from these training camp roster additions. Sam Bitten and Scott Harrington and Matthew Pekka are all still under contract with Springfield. So these guys are kind of already in the organization. They just got an offer to come to training camp, I think maybe to fill out some lines, but also, give these guys a look. They all deserve a look. They're all pro hockey players. We've seen Pekka play up here. Harrington's had a nice NHL career, to be quite honest. So, yeah, why not give these guys a look, see what they can bring? Maybe they fit into Drew Bannister's mold. By the way, his first training camp, so it should be interesting to see how they react to anything he has them do here in training camp, different from what we've seen from Berube the past couple of years. An interesting note on Nikita Alexandrov. So, for those who may not realize, he's a restricted free agent right now. I did not know that you could invite a restricted free agent from your own team, or I guess from anyone's team, to your training camp. I just figured he's free agent. You can't just have him at camp. He's not under contract, but he's using a PTO, a tryout contract. Very odd to see. And Doug Armstrong did say on this situation, he says, quote, "Right now we're at 50 contracts, so Nicky's going to come to camp. We're working on getting something that he's comfortable with under contract for when our junior players go back. those things open up, but he wants to be in camp. He wants to push for a roster spot, and he and I and his agent are working behind the scenes to make sure that gets done. He'll just come in on a PTO now, and we'll take care of that as the camp progresses. So it does sound like the Blues have full intentions of signing Nikita Alexandrov, but as Armstrong said, with all the additions this summer, they are at 50 contracts, which is the max allowable in the NHL. So basically, once these guys start going back to juniors, some of these names that are at training camp, that does dwindle that number down. So yes, there will be an opening coming up for Alexandrov. Does sound like the Blues are interested in bringing him back. I mean, he was on the NHL roster last year. He's a great AHL player for Springfield. It makes sense. Bring him back, see what he can do. I like that he is. It shows competitiveness to me that he is wanting to come to training camp. He doesn't want to miss training camp. He doesn't want to just step in mid-season whenever this contract's done. So good on him, and I'm sure the boys will love having him in camp. Seems like a well-liked guy by all accounts from Blues players. There was some news that came from Doug Armstrong before camp. Torrey Krug had surgery Tuesday on his ankles. From all accounts, sounds like it was a success. In terms of the surgery itself, there was no issues with the surgery. We'll see how his progression goes in getting back to playing shape if that happens, which we all hope it does. Oscar Sundqvist, who has a knee issue, and then Adam Juracek, also a knee issue, are not expected to play in preseason games. But from all accounts, which I think this is a little ahead of schedule from what we heard, Sundqvist will be ready for the start of the season. So I think Texier was brought in to kind of take Sundqvist's spot until he was ready, at least. I mean, I don't think it's a situation where Texier is going to sit. I think he's a good enough player. He's going to still play. But I think that was one of the big reasons they went out and got him. But it looks like Sundqvist is going to be ready. So good. More competition for start of the season for third and fourth line center spots. We'll see where they land, but good news for Sundqvist been able to come back. I know he's a fan favorite with his love of St. Louis. And we've talked about there, and we're going to talk about here with Matthew DeFranks in a minute. There's kind of a hole there at that second line center. So apparently Pavel Buchnevich is going to get looks at camp early on to see if he has what it takes to be a second-line center. There's a lot of roster construction that happened over the summer, so it'll be interesting to see who he would match with on the second line as a center. Again, I've said it before, I don't like him at center. I think he's 30% on faceoffs, but that's not even the biggest part. I just don't think he looks as comfortable. I think he's a much better player on the boards, coming up on the rush on the wing, crossing across center, not having as much defensive responsibility. I just don't think Buchnevich is much. He's not a bad center, but I just think he's a much better winger. I always said the same thing about David Backes. I always thought David Backes was better served as a right wing, but I think it's more so with Buchnevich. I just think his skill shines a little bit more when he's playing on the wing. He's a little bit more comfortable. So not a fan of this, really, but hey, training camp, let's just see. Maybe something's changed. Maybe he clicks with a couple wingers, and all of a sudden I'm eating my words. So all for just giving it a look and seeing what you can come up with. Well, again, we've got Matthew DeFranks coming up. Excited to share this interview with you. But first, we're going to take a quick break. You are listening to Let's Go Blues Radio.
We'll return after these messages.
As a hockey player, Mike Burgoyne knows a thing or two about making the perfect play. And when it comes to real estate, he's always ready to score the winning goal for his clients. If you're a first responder, a veteran, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, or a Let's Go Blues Radio listener looking to score the home of your dreams, you'll receive special rates with Mike. Go ahead, shoot some questions his way, and he'll have the answer quicker than Curtis Joseph on a breakaway.
Curtis Joseph got the paddle down!
Any barriers? Mike will mow them down like Chris Pronger in front of the net. He'll score you your dream home or sell your existing home faster than a Brett Hall one-timer.
Put past the Hall, he shoots, he scores!
See Burgoyne's real estate prowess in action today by emailing him at mike@strikewithmike.com or by calling 314-753-4060 That email again is mike@strikewithmike.com, and that phone number is 314-753-4060. Getting Mike Burgoyne on your team will be the boost your power play needs.
Well, honey, I just priced the power washing for the house, and I think we should just move and condemn this place. It'll be cheaper.
Did you try Wolf Power Washing?
Who?
Oh, I just saw this guy win the Stanley Ponder Cup Memorial Tournament and thought he was attractive, so I looked him up on social media, and it turns out he's the owner and proprietor of Wolf Power Washing. He claims he has the best prices in town.
But does he use non-flammable, non-toxic chemicals that are safe for Wolfie and our son, little Magnus?
Yes, he ensures there'll be no residue left behind, and he doesn't use any volatile vapors.
Well, this fella sounds like a dream. I just wish I knew how to contact him.
Oh, I know how. You can reach him at 314-420-5434.
314-420-5434, and his name is Joe Wolf of Wolf Power Washing?
That's right.
But how did you know his number so quickly?
I'll never tell.
Wait, what?
That's Wolf Power Washing at 314-420-5434. And make sure to tell him Let's Go Blues Radio sent you.
And now, back to Let's Go Blues Radio, the longest running St. Louis Blues podcast with Price, Ponder, and Day.
And I am honored to be joined by Matt DeFranks of St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He is your Blues beat writer, one that we've probably the youngest that I've seen in my lifetime. Matt, thank you very much for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I don't know the history of the Post-Dispatch Blues beat writers, but yeah, I guess that's an honor, I guess, to be the youngest.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of all the names. I've had Dave Luking, Jeremy Rutherford, Jim Thomas, obviously, and now you. That's as far back as I could remember. But I mean, especially Jeremy. That guy's like in his 70s. So So anyway, yeah, like I said, St. Louis beat writer, but you've been covering the NHL for a while. You started off covering the Florida Panthers for the South Florida Sun Sentinel, and then the Dallas Stars for the Dallas Morning News for a couple seasons. What made you get into hockey writing?
Yeah, so this was back in 2017. I was at the Sun Sentinel, and I was covering FAU football. That was the beginning of the Lane Kiffin era down there. And then about 3 games into the football season, they moved me over to cover the Panthers. That's when their training camp was starting. The Panthers writer had actually just gotten laid off. So a bit of an unfortunate circumstance on a macro scale for the Sun Sentinel and journalism in general. But it opened an opportunity for me to cover the NHL. And, down in South Florida, it's a little bit different, back then, especially, obviously with the cup they won this summer, interest in the Panthers is a lot higher. But back then, they were at least 5th on the totem pole in South Florida, right? When you have the Dolphins, the Heat, even the Marlins are probably ahead of them. The Canes, they had maybe on some nights, probably even high school football was ahead of the Panthers. So back in those days, that was the Dale Tallon era, and they were missing playoffs pretty regularly. Hadn't won a series since '96. So it was a little bit different in South Florida. And, towards the end of the season with the Sun Sentinel, they stopped traveling. They started adding different things. And so I started looking for a new job and landed in Dallas. And I had a wonderful 4.5 years there from 2018 until about Christmas time of 22. So, now going into, I think this is going to be my 8th season covering the NHL. So it's been a fun ride. I've enjoyed it a lot. And I think to me, I've really enjoyed covering the NHL so much that when I looked at new jobs, that was the only job that I was looking for. Like when I moved to Dallas, I moved to be the Stars beat writer. When I moved here, it was to be the Blues beat writer. I wasn't looking for jobs in other sports. I wanted to stick in hockey and love being around it.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. Because yeah, I'll admit there's kind of a history here in St. Louis, and no knocks at all to the Rutherford or Jim Thomas, who did great jobs covering the Blues, but it was always like the football guys moved over to do hockey, and it was like, let's get a hockey guy. So you're a hockey guy. Um, as you told me off air, you grew up in the Miami area. Did you grow up watching hockey, or was it something you kind of picked up as an adult?
Yeah, I mean, grew up watching it and following the sport, but it's just completely different from, following the sport and enjoying it casually to covering it day to day and having to know the ins and outs of the CBA and the reserve list and the prospects and even some of that around the league, right? And getting to know the people around it, getting to know how things are getting done. So, uh, when I first had my jump to cover the Panthers, it was a lot, and I'm sure even my casual uh, fandom of the Panthers growing up uh, wasn't probably on the same level as people here or people further north where football isn't king like it is in South Florida. And when I was growing up, that was the second coming of University of Miami football when the early 2000s they were really good. And so a lot of my younger years were watching them. And then, when the Heat drafted Dwayne Wade and, had Shaq in those years. And that was a little bit later on in when I was growing up. So a lot of the attention when I was growing up was on different sports then, and it didn't help that the Panthers were not very good. Like they had the one run in '96, and everyone remembers that. But outside of that, I'm sure a lot of people just remember Olli Jokinen, if even they remember him. So the Panthers weren't really a big thing when I was growing up, but it was still something that me as a sports fan enjoyed watching. And I can remember going to some practices with my dad, like I see now when children and families go to Blues practices on the weekends, and I can remember doing that as a kid going to Panthers practices in South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, South Florida, obviously now it's doing well with the Stanley Cup win and the Stanley Cup Finals appearances 2 years in a row, and then even some maybe bleed over from Tampa having such a good team too. So Florida's growing as a hockey market still to this day. Dallas kind of there as well. I think I lived there in 2013, 2012, somewhere in that area. And they that was right when Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin were right in the prime of their careers. Things seemed like they were picking up in terms of Stars fans coming back since the 99 Cup win. But St. Louis, to me, is, at least in the Midwest, one of the biggest hockey cities. So for you, was it kind of like a weird culture shock coming from South Florida to Dallas and now to St. Louis, where it's like everyone's probably always asking you about hockey, even in July and August?
Yeah, it has been a little bit different, and I think the stop in Dallas did help to kind of transition a little bit, because going from Florida to here would have been very jarring. I think, because I think about when I left Florida in 18, and one of the last stories that I did was sitting down with Vinny Viola, who's the owner there, and talking about the state of the team and the state of the franchise. And at that time, fans were still pissed off about Marchessault and Smith and Gerard Gallant all going to Vegas and them going to the Cup final in year one. The team was losing, I would say, maybe about $20 million a year. There was an out in the contracts that if the Panthers had lost X amount of money over a certain period of time, they were able to relocate. Like, that was what I was talking about with, the Panthers at that time. Like, they had just lost some of their key players and had watched them go on to have success elsewhere. Their fans are worried about the competency of Dale Tallon. They're worried about the team leaving. People around the league are worried about that. Like, that is the state of the Florida hockey when I left. And it's thankfully in a lot different space right now. But I think going from that to St. Louis would have been quite a shock. And even when I was in Dallas, when I'm be driving around and I'd see a license plate cover that said, Dallas Stars, or a window sticker that had the Stars logo, I'd be like, oh, look, there's a Stars fan. Like, that's all right, that's cool. And then now, I remember my first few months here, I would drive around and I would just see them everywhere, and I would talk to my wife and be like, yeah, I have to forget that, like, it's in Dallas, if you're a Stars fan, you're kind of like, it's almost a niche. But if you're in St. Louis, you are a Blues fan, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah,
so
100%.
I think that was a little bit, not so much of an adjustment, but just like cool to see that, it's a city that cares so much about hockey. And yeah, it's been fun. And like you said, like whenever I'm at a family function, or going to a couples shower for a wedding or something, like, people know what I do for a job, and asking how they look in this season, and everyone seems to have a lot of optimism. I can sense that from dealings on social media, and then just from talking to people in real life, that there's some real optimism about this coming season. But I do hear about it quite a bit.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a ton, and it's really changed too, because I think July 1st there was a lot of what are we doing? We're just sitting on our hands. Then I think the offer sheet thing is what really changed fans' opinions. But we'll get to that in a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit more about you before we get to the Blues. So again, you were covering the Dallas Stars in 2019, and let's see, no, you were still in Florida in 2016, so you missed that series. But when the Blues played the Stars in 2019, there was a lot of optimism around Dallas, and we always say on this show, Dallas must hate the Blues. They must hate the Blues because they have stopped them since 99. They have been in their way almost every time they've had a good team. So what is the perception of the St. Louis Blues in Dallas?
Yeah, I think during that 19 run, I think a lot of Stars fans saw what the Blues ended up going on to do, and a lot of the thought was that that could have been them. Jamie Benn wraparounds is kind of like a curse word in Dallas, to be quite honest. And you're that close. In actuality, they didn't deserve to be anywhere in that game 7. I think at some point after like the first period, the Stars had 3 shots on goal and in a really long period of time. So they didn't really deserve to be in it. Ben Bishop kept them there, but that doesn't stop you from thinking that they were this close to beating the eventual cup winner. So, I think a lot of that, I guess, rivalry has transitioned more to the Wild in recent years, and the Avalanche. I mean, they beat the Avalanche twice in the playoffs in 2020 and this year, and they had the Wild last year, and they've had some really rough and tumble preseason games actually with Minnesota too. So I think in 2019, I would say the Blues were probably one of the chief rivals of the Stars, but I think for both franchises that's kind of changed since. I mean, what the Blues have had 2 playoff series against Colorado since then, and obviously the one had a lot of animosity with Binnington getting hurt. So I think for both franchises, it's moved on a little bit, but there is always connections between the two of them, and starting at the very top with Doug Armstrong, his history in Dallas, and all of the things he brought from there, and the mistakes he made in Dallas that he's seemed to learn from a little bit during his time in St. Louis. And even this summer, I think the trade for Radek Faksa was the first one in years and years that the Blues and Stars actually had together. And then we also saw the addition of Ryan Suter. So some former Stars here this year, and always some connections between the franchises.
Yeah, definitely. So again, you're I don't want to say new to St. Louis, but you haven't been around a very long time. So I want to ask your thoughts on a couple St. Louis staples.
Yeah.
Have you had St. Louis pizza? What are your thoughts?
Yes. So I've had Emos, and then what's the other one? Cecil Whitaker's, is that it?
Cecil's, yeah.
Yeah. So I've had both of them. I think when I first had it, I didn't quite know what to expect, because it's such a unique pizza, like from the crispiness of the crust, the obviously the cheese, the way the toppings are underneath the cheese, the way that they cut a circle into squares, like it's just different in a bunch of different ways. And I'm also probably in the very small minority that I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other about it. I know when I speak to some people that come from out of town, it is like the worst thing that they have ever tasted. And I'm not breaking any news to St. Louisans that other people may not like their pizza. But I'm not on the St. Louis native level where that is my favorite thing that I can just crave and want to have it all the time. So if we get it, that's fine. If we go to a more traditional pizza place, that's fine too. Like I don't really have strong feelings about St. Louis style pizza.
So my wife's family is from Columbia, Missouri, where they all went to Mizzou, and she was conceived in Columbia, and she hates St. Louis style pizza. And I'm like, well, you're not a St. Louis native. And she's like, yes, I am. I'm like, no, you're not technically. So I'm like, no, you can't like St. Louis style pizza. You have to be a native. That's the way I see it. So I don't blame you one bit for your response. I've met one person that moved here in their 20s and said, oh my God, I love St. Louis style pizza. And I'm like, you are an anomaly because that never happens.
Yeah. I mean, we got married here in St. Louis when we were still living in Dallas. And so, a lot of, my family members, it was their first trip to St. Louis was for the wedding. And they had some emos and some T-Ravs. And I can tell you that T-Ravs were a much bigger hit than the actual pizza itself.
Yep. Yeah, that's my next question. T-Ravs. I'm a big fan. I've never met anyone who doesn't like it, who've tried it. So it sounds like you are too.
Yeah, huge fan. Like I don't know if there's anything not to like about them. That's not something that needs to be an acquired taste. It's just a good thing. I don't know. Anytime there are some T-Ravs, I think I always underestimate how many I will end up eating. It's just you always eat more when they're deep fried than if they are on a plate and covered in pasta sauce. So
true. What about gooey butter cake?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of it just because it is very rich.
Very rich.
But when I do have it, I like it, and honestly, even Schnucks Bakery when they have the gooey butter cake donuts.
Oh yeah,
those are legit. I do like those.
Oh yeah, very good. All right, let's get into what I'm sure people are saying. Like, dude, ask him about hockey stuff. So let's get into it. I wanted to ask you. Most recently, you had a bunch of stories come out because the Blues had the prospect tournament here with the Wild and Blackhawks recently. You had some stories. Simon Robertson came up a lot. You had a great story with Will Cranley. But from what you saw, if you could just have a couple main takeaways from what you saw in the game, because clearly you're a student of the game, you understand it. What were some names that maybe popped out to you that either you kind of expected, or maybe even you were like, whoa, this kid wasn't even on my radar, and look at how good he was?
Yeah, I think there's a decent handful of names. Obviously, I'll just start with the big three that everyone likes to discuss. And I thought Zach Bolduc was really good in the two games. On the Friday against Chicago, that line was probably the best line on the ice for the Blues. Bolduc, Dean, and Alexandru Kastamaki. They were really good together, generating chances. Bolduc and Kastamaki had some maybe missed link ups in the first period, but they're generating chances, and it's the first period they played together. And but they were really good. And I thought on Sunday against Minnesota, Bolduc had the highlight reel goal where he cuts through the middle of the ice and slips a backhand between the legs to tie the game. And that's a move that it just came out of nowhere. And in these prospect games, it can be sometimes a very individual game. Guys are trying to make impressions. There's not a lot of structure. People are running around. It's not very formal, right? And to see him make a move like that in somewhat of a scrambly game, was kind of a whoa moment. And he also had other moments in the game where he's fighting for pucks. He's throwing the body around. He's being physical. He's actually being a little bit of a pest to Minnesota. And maybe I'm sure some of that is he's going up against, 18, 19-year-olds, guys on invites, guys on AHL deals. It's not the same caliber that he'll be facing in the NHL, but I thought he looks out of place in a good way in the prospect tournament. Zach Dean, I thought, was also pretty good. He had a little bit of a rougher Sunday when he took 3 minors, I think in the second period alone. But on the Friday, he was probably the Blues' best player on the ice. Hit 3 posts, had 2 assists, had a rebound bump off his skate a few inches wide of the net. So, we could have been looking at a real prolific night for Zach Dean if a few inches go one way or the other. And I thought it was his ability to stick his nose in on the boards and win pucks that way, get on the forecheck, win pucks that way. Both of his assists on Friday were of the same variety. One was winning a puck behind the net and feeding Lucas Fisher out for a shot. And the other was, helping Kastamaki on the wall to fish a puck out and then eventually getting up to the point for Matthew Mayich. So he was in battles. He was winning pucks. He looked good that way. More so on Friday than on Sunday, but still a solid 2 games for Zach Dean. And then Dalibor Dvorsky is the third one that everyone likes to talk about. And I thought Friday, like he didn't look bad. He didn't look good. He was very active shooting the puck. I think he showed off his quick release a lot. And for him, he's a guy who likes to slow down the game a little bit. When he gets the puck, he protects it well. He possesses it well. He can find teammates. He can get a shot off in a split second. So he likes to kind of get the puck and put a guy on his hip and make plays that way. So when the speed of the game is already a little bit slower, maybe that doesn't stand out a ton. But I think he looked fine on Friday. And then on Sunday, I think a lot of what the Blues did against Minnesota was a product of bad goaltending. It was an 18-year-old 5th-round pick who gave up 6 goals in 30 minutes, I think on like 18 shots or something, 6 goals and 18 shots, I want to say. So some of it was a little bit shoddy goaltending, but some of the plays Dvorsky made, he had 3 assists in the third period, were skill plays. I mean, a little touch pass around the front of the net to Pekarchik. He had a nice, I want to say he hooked the puck to Marc-Andre Gaudet on a shorthanded rush. But it was a nice pass to have that vision and to get it to him in the right spot. So he made some skill plays. I think a lot of his evaluation will be during training camp, during exhibitions, during stuff like that, and less so during a prospect tournament. So those 3 guys are the main ones that we all like to talk about. And outside of that, I think there were 3 players who played similar styles that stood out. Kastamaki, Simon Robertson, and Dylan Peterson. They all played with some speed. They played with some bite. They got into battles. They won pucks. They got into their skilled teammates. They kind of showed a little bit of compete level, as people in hockey like to say, instead of competitiveness. I never really understood that. But they showed a little bit of that. And Peterson's got the size, and Kastamaki I think has maybe a little bit more offensive touch than Peterson and Robertson. He just looks like someone who's very professional, and it should make sense because he's played professionally in Sweden. I think I looked he's played SHL games in each of the last 5 years. It doesn't mean that he spent his entire season in the SHL, but he's had a lot of experience playing against pros, and he looks like he understands a pro game. So those were kind of the forwards I liked. And on the back end, Bushinger, he was, I would say, the most consistent defenseman, transporting pucks, having some offensive ability, jumping into plays, finding teammates. That's kind of what you expect out of him. And he did look a lot stockier than I remember him being. The comp for him has always been Vince Dunn. That's what Tim Taylor has said on multiple occasions, that Bushinger has a little bit of Vince Dunn in him. And actually saw a little bit of it on Friday. He gets in a little tussle with Colton Dock of Chicago. Matthew Mayich, I think he had a good tournament. Will Cranley looked good after not having a good tournament last year. So a lot to like. I mean, obviously there's going to be some drawbacks along the way with some prospects, but a lot of them are 18, 19 years old. They got a lot of time in front of them.
One of the things that you wrote about, and I don't want to give it away, make sure you check out what Matthew wrote, but you wrote something about Simon Robertson. He had a quote that said something about like, we just decided it was time to come over. And you look at, and it's no secret, the Blues have kind of been coveting some Swedish players, with maybe the Alexander Steen influence being a part of that. Did you notice the kind of the big boom in Swedes? Like, did they all kind of stand out to you, or was it still like, some of these guys need some more development?
Yeah, I mean, I think with him in particular, I was like, hey, so what made now the time to come over to North America? And he's like, oh, I've been wanting to come over, but they thought it was best for my development to stay in Europe, and he's very excited to be in North America now. Yeah, I think for a lot of the Swedish players we didn't really get to see because they were playing over in Europe right now. So Otto Stenberg, Theo Lindstein, the first rounders from last year, have already started their preseasons over in Sweden, and that's kind of part of what made Robertson's performance this weekend notable, is that this was his first prospect tournament. A lot of these junior guys, they play in one when they're 18, they play in one when they're 19, they play in the 20, they play when they're 21. Like, they play in a lot of these, but the Europeans and the college players, they don't have the opportunity to play in these. So Robertson, it was his first one playing as a European coming over. Same with Koskamaki. But yeah, the Swedish influence. I think in the past maybe we would have also seen guys like Marcus Silvegaard or Samuel Johannesson play in these. I know last year Andre Heim played in it, even though he was probably 24, 25 years old. So we didn't get to see them, and I'm intrigued to see what they look like during training camp. I mean, Johannesson, a defenseman out of Sweden, who piled up a lot of points. He was one of the top scorers among defensemen in Sweden last year. Figures to run a power play in Springfield, and then Silvegaard. The highlights that I've seen of him, I haven't watched full games of him, but he seems like a feisty fella, and that'll probably play well in the AHL. So there is going to be some Swedish influence in addition to Robertson. Leo Loof is there. They'll have Silvegaard. They'll have Johannesson. Players that have played in Sweden before, whether it's Dvorsky, Jakob Stansel, who are both in North America now, and then obviously Stenberg and Lindstein still playing overseas.
Yep. So I also wanted to ask you, so clearly you were at the prospect tournament. Summer, I know you guys kind of try to take some time off. I know that never really happens. But you're still around the team. You're still talking to the right people. So what's the buzz been around the team regarding the offer-sheeted players that Doug Armstrong picked up this summer, Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway? What have you heard? And is there that, because there's a lot of excitement in the fan base, what about within the organization?
Yeah, I think it's tempered excitement, I want to say, because there's already going to be so many eyes on them and so many expectations on them just because of the offer sheets and then also the numbers that the offer sheets came with. I saw the quote from Stan Bowman the other day saying that they're being paid above what they've earned so far, and that's absolutely true. Like, that's not a market value deal for either of them. Holloway's is a little bit closer to what you would have expected out of a player like him, but Broberg, a guy who spent most of last year in the AHL, getting 4.6 is a little bit excessive on the open market, but to be able to get the player, that's what you needed to do. You can't pay a market value price for an RFA and expect to get that player. So that's just the way that it is for RFAs if you're going to pry them out of other teams. And when Doug Armstrong spoke to reporters after the offer sheets were not matched and the Blues got the players, he described Holloway as a top 9 forward, Broberg as a top 4D. And when I talked to Drew Bannister last week, I was talking to him about Broberg and maybe what the usage would be like with him. And he said, yeah, he's going to get some good minutes. You're going to get some tougher minutes at even strength. He's going to be on the PK We don't anticipate him being on the power play to start. I think he said that in that they don't want to put too much on his plate early because he's going to be putting so much pressure on himself. They don't want to give him added pressure. And, I think his skills don't quite line up with running a top power play, maybe power play 2 or something like that. But I think you can see him in a top 4 role, maybe playing alongside Justin Falk, being on the penalty kill, not on the power play, I wouldn't think. And then with Holloway, you'll see him in a top 9 position. I think he has the ability to move up and down within that group, be someone who can jumpstart a line with his energy and his skating ability, the bite that he brings. I think it would be fun to see him and Jake Neighbors on a same line, just with the type of tenacity that they would bring. But the worry that's a pretty young line that doesn't have a proven play driver on it, so to speak. So they really need a third member to really drive them well. But I think you're going to see Holloway with some good minutes, and he'll probably be, I would imagine, getting some decent time on special teams.
So another pickup this summer has been the pickup of the Joseph brothers, and there's been a little bit of buzz around that. Obviously, it was tempered more when the offer sheet news came around, but I know there's a lot of excitement with them being able to play together on the same NHL team, coming from Ottawa and Pittsburgh. Have you talked to the brothers yet, and are they pretty confident that they've got a spot on the NHL roster?
Yeah, so I talked to them over the summer, maybe about a week or 2 after they landed in St. Louis, contractually, not physically. But they were pretty excited about it. I mean, from P.O. Joseph's point of view, he was the one who was a free agent that signed in St. Louis, whereas Matthew was traded from Ottawa to St. Louis. So he had the decision to make. He had control of where he wanted to sign, and he found out that his brother was being traded to St. Louis. He found out that there was an offer from the Blues on the table, and he said, yeah, that was a no-brainer. This is a once-in-a-lifetime situation where I get to play with my brother. Never happened before. My parents don't have to watch 2 games. They don't have to travel to 2 cities. They live together in the offseason, and I don't know what ended up being decided from that perspective now, but they're at least talking about whether they wanted to live together in St. Louis again. And I think it brings familiar faces into a room where you're a new guy, and then suddenly your brother's also a new guy. And I think the excitement would be tempered just a little bit, just based on the fact that we don't know how involved P.O. Joseph is going to be on defense. I think if you look at the defensive depth chart, and let's say you just pencil in pairings: Letty Parayko, Broberg, Falk, Suter, Kessel, that leaves Brunovich, Joseph, Tucker. In my mind, I feel like Tucker might be headed towards the AHL. You have to waive him to get him there, but it seems that would be an option. And then you have Joseph maybe sitting there as a 7 or 8. So they might be on the same team, and maybe they'll get to play with each other for a bit. But I don't know how regular P.O. Joseph will be in the lineup, which is kind of a little bit surprising given that he did play, I think, 52 or 53 games with Pittsburgh last year. At times he was playing with Chris Letang. The numbers didn't work out in Pittsburgh, and suddenly he ends up in St. Louis. So good depth to have. I'm just unsure of what his role is going to end up being. And Matthew Joseph, he'll be in the mix. He'll probably be one of those guys that moves up and down the lineup as well, but can provide some speed, provide some jump, and some penalty killing when he's in there.
So obviously we've gone through a lot here with talking about the prospects, the Joseph brothers, the offer sheeted players that are brought in. But what are some other storylines that you're because I know how your brain works, being a former reporter myself, you're already like, okay, what stories are going to come out of training camp? What should I expect? What should I be looking for? So what are you looking for heading into Blues training camp in just a couple days?
Yeah, this is one of the camps that I can at least remember there being at least a few spots up for grabs. It's not always that way with NHL training camps. A lot of times contracts make rosters. That's just the way it is. But a lot of these guys, I don't think Kasperi Kapanen's 1 year, $1 million contract is making him a lock on the roster, right? I don't know if Oscar Sundqvist's health is making him a lock on the roster. What do guys like we talked about Dean, Bolduc, Dvorsky, what do they bring? Is Perunovic ready to take a step forward this year with maybe some power play time in line? Like, for him to grab that power play time, he has to be one of the six. Can he be one of the six? I think those are kind of the training camp storylines. Like Robert Thomas is a big storyline for the season, but during training camp, there's not a ton to monitor with him other than who his line mates would be. So the training camp storylines are a little more interesting on the fringes of the roster, and who's going to be running the power play with Krug out, who's going to be on the bottom six. How do the combinations work out there, and maybe who's the odd man out on defense. So kind of those fringe storylines will be ones to follow during camp, and the bigger ones will take a more of a center stage once the season starts. When you look at the goaltending, can they keep up what they did last year? Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, like those are the guys that are going to have to. The old cliche goes, the best players got to be the best players. Those are the guys that have to be the best players, and that'll be more center stage during the season. But during training camp, a lot more decision-making things on my mind.
One of the more interesting guys every season since he came here has been the starting goaltender in Jordan Binnington. We've talked about him countless times on this show about how much hate he gets across the league, and even from some Blues fans that don't believe that he's a true number one. I think last season was more this is my opinion, last season more of who he really is. I think he is a good starting goalie. A lot of talk over the summer about Canadian goaltending with all this stuff coming up with players playing for their countries. Jordan Binnington stands to be possibly, especially with Doug Armstrong leading Team Canada. He seems to be a front runner for Team Canada, which is a huge deal for a Canadian goaltender. What are your thoughts on Jordan Binnington heading into the season? Are you kind of expecting the same of what we've seen the past two seasons? Do you think he takes a step back? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's kind of my biggest question going into the season is about the goaltending, because they were so good last year as a tandem. I think they got maybe a little underrated just based on the season that the Blues had in general, but the advanced statistics really like what they did from a goal saved above expected. I think I'll have to look it up again today when I write a little bit about them, but I remember in April and May when I was looking up how they stacked up against the other teams and the other tandems in the league. It was basically like Winnipeg, and that was a lot of Hellebuck and a little bit of Brossoit. There was New York, and that was a lot of Shesterkin and a little bit of Quick. Florida had a good tandem with Bobrovsky. Like, these were the top teams in the league, and I think the Blues might have been fourth or fifth in terms of total goals saved above expected. And from a possession standpoint, the Blues were a bottom 3 to 5 team in the league. Like, they were down there with the Sharks and the Blackhawks. If you look at shot attempt percentage and shots for scoring chances, expected, all of those, they were a bottom 3 to 5 team, but their goaltending was good enough to withstand that. And when I look at this season, I see the roster and I see that they might be a better team. I think the skaters, they're a better team from a forward and defenseman perspective. But if the goaltending takes even a tiny step back, it might not look as much as a better team in the standings, just because goaltending is such a big part of the game. And it can vary from year to year. I mean, this with goaltending, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're bad. Like, I think if you said 2 years ago that Binnington would be maybe a front runner to start for Team Canada, after the sub 900 season that he put in, I think you would have been a little bit worried about the state of Canadian goaltending. But after this past season, where he was legitimately one of the best 3 to 5 goalies in the league, I don't think he got his due in Vezina voting from the GMs. But he had a really good season. And if him and Hofer can replicate that, I think the Blues are in a great spot because their roster is a little bit improved. But if they do take a little bit of a step back, I think the improvement in the roster is not nearly enough to offset a little bit of a step back from the goalies.
So what is the weakest spot on this team right now? I mean, if there is one or if there's multiple, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they're a team in transition, so there is going to be multiple, right? I think you can look at the 2C hole and wonder who's going to be the second line center. And for years, that's been Braden Shen, and his production's dropped off the last few years, and especially last year in his first year as captain. So he's produced more as a third line center. And if he is the second liner, that's not a team that's contending. If you have him as a third line center, you're in a much better spot. Obviously, they've talked about putting Pavel Buchnevich there. We've seen it over the last few years to end the season, him be in that spot. I think he likes the idea of it. He likes giving it a shot. I don't know how much he loves taking faceoffs and being 35% of the faceoffs, or playing center some shifts and win some shifts, and center one game and win the other game. I think he's a guy who likes a more defined role. So we'll see what it looks like in training camp in a few days, which position he's at. I think that's a big one. Obviously, long term, you look at Dvorsky and see that he can maybe be a second line center in the long term. But he's 19 years old. Who knows if that's even something that happens this season? I think we've been talking about this probably for the last 2-3 years. The need for a number one defenseman. They have, I think, when you look at what Florida did this playoff run with Ekblad, Forsling, Montour, Mikula, Kulikov, like that group of defensemen. Ekblad is the closest one they had in the past to a number one defenseman. Forsling had, the even strength numbers to make that claim this year, but like none of them were really a true number one guy. And I think if you looked at what Doug Armstrong did when Pietrangelo walked and said, all right, well, I have a number two in Parayko, I have a number two in Falk, I have a number two in Krug, I have I think he was trying to build a core that would have been similar looking to Florida's, in that there wasn't a number one, but a bunch of, high-end twos or some threes mixed together. When you have a number three guy playing a number 5 or 6 position, you're in a decent spot. But I think that would have been kind of the dream for Armstrong, to have that core where you're able to let Pietrangelo walk and have guys that can fill in with depth there. And I don't know if that's still his philosophy right now, because I think if we asked about getting a number one defenseman, a lot of the responses around the league when I've talked to people have been like, hey, that's just really hard to do. A lot of them are just drafted. Right now, if you look at Makar, drafted by the Avs, Hastinen drafted. Fox was a little bit of a different story, where his rights were traded to the Rangers, but he hasn't played an NHL game for a team other than them. Faber was traded as a prospect. Like they have a bunch of different guys that were drafted and not signed as free agents. I mean, basically, when you look at free agent signings for a number one defenseman, it's Pietrangelo in Vegas and it's Hamilton in New Jersey, and that's about it. Every other one was either drafted, traded for as a prospect, and then you have Brent Burns in there too. Brent Burns, Eric Carlson, the older guys who have been around and had some transactions. So really hard to find those, and I wonder if you look at the detour that the Blues are setting up right now and in the future, the future pieces being Broberg, Lindstein, Juracek, in addition to more veteran players. Fox still got a few more years. Parayko still got a few more years. We'll see what Krug looks like, after the surgery, and Leddy will be a little bit more short term. But they have a lot of not a true number one on the back end, but if things pan out, maybe they could have a situation with a bunch of number twos and number threes playing in roles that are different than what their skills would really necessitate.
All right. And I agree 100%. I've said that before. Like, you think of the players that have been traded for their number one defenseman, Seth Jones. But, Chicago's defense is questionable at best. Carolina, I guess you could make the claim that it's Burns. Yeah, it's so rare that you see that. So, yeah, I'm 100% with you. That's what I've told people. You just have to wait. Maybe, and Broberg, maybe he's the guy. I don't know. But even if he is, he played, 50 games before coming to the Blues. So, if he is that guy, he's maybe one of the exceptions. But still, it's very rare you see something like that.
Yeah. I mean, even like you look at, Hughes in Vancouver, drafted by them. It's tough to find him, and I'm not quite as high on Broberg being a true number one. When I watched him play, he looked like Jay Bouwmeester. The way that his length is, the way he skates, the way he defends, and in his prime, Bouwmeester could have qualified as a number one when he was in Calgary or even in Florida, languishing away with the Panthers. But he's not in that upper echelon for me, Broberg, in terms of projection. Maybe he proves me wrong. I think that'd be great for Blues fans, but we'll just have to wait and see on him.
Yep. All right, Matt, I did ask you beforehand if you would like to play a game to end our interview here, and we're going to play that now. You don't know what this is. It's a game I'm calling DeFranks Different De-Lives.
Ooh.
So what I'm going to do is I am going to give you a headline with some information omitted, and you have to tell me if that is a headline from your days with the Post-Dispatch, the Dallas Morning News, or the Sun Sentinel in Florida.
Okay. So this, it should be straightforward, but I think you got some tricks. I don't know.
It should be. We'll see. Right. The only one that's gone 10 for 10 in one of these games is Tom Calhoun, actually. I played with him. It was the two colleges he went to, Lindenwood and SIUE, and I gave a claim of something that happened there, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. He got them all right. So Let's see if you're at Tom Calhoun level.
All right. He's a good guy. I like him.
Yeah, great guy. All right. Here we go. So again, some of the information is omitted. You'll be able to tell what that is. So this first one is, quote, a real simple way to play. This team tweak defensive zone coverage entering regular season.
That was the Blues last year.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch on October 11th, 2023. You are 1 for 1. All right. Number 2. This team notebook, the importance of scoring first, dropping gloves for the team.
I'll go with the Sun Sentinel on that one with the Panthers. I don't know.
That is incorrect. That is the Dallas Morning News. That was on November 27th, 2002. So that was the Stars notebook.
Okay.
All right. Number 3, quote, kind of like a family holiday. In celebrating the new year together, this team's Russian players find a slice of home.
That was Post-Dispatch. That was from this January.
That's correct.
That was a fun story.
That was St. Louis Post-Dispatch on January 2nd, 2024. Here's another. Quote, very weird feeling follows this team's home schedule ends and regular season winds down.
That's a confusing headline. Can I get it again?
Very weird feeling follows this team home schedule ends and regular season winds down. So that's a possessive. Follows this team.
Yeah.
Their home schedule ends and regular season winds down.
Let's go with the Sun Sentinel. Maybe that was the year they missed the playoffs and they're just playing it out. I don't know.
That was St. Louis Post-Dispatch, April 13th, 2023. So last season. Well, I guess 2 seasons ago now. Yeah. All right. Here's another. Matthew DeFranks explains the reasoning behind his NHL awards ballot.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been from any year, but I do know that was from the Sun Sentinel.
Sun Sentinel, April 6th, 2019. And this is another possessive. So this team's galvanizing comeback versus Blackhawks has them in an ideal spot entering Thanksgiving.
I know it wasn't St. Louis because the only Thanksgiving I've covered with them was that crazy game in Arizona last year.
Yeah.
Come back against the Blackhawks. I feel just from a probability perspective, and that I got like 5 Thanksgivings in Dallas and 1 in Florida. We'll just go with Dallas on this one.
That is excellent deductive reasoning, sir, because you are correct. Dallas Morning News on November 24th, 2022. Here's one for you. Mason Marchment gets involved quickly with 2 goals in this team's preseason win versus Coyotes.
Well, that's Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah, I thought maybe I'd get you because Mason played for both teams, but
I missed him in Florida, so
there you go. Well, you know then. So it's Dallas Morning News on September 28th, 2022. We have 3 more to go. So with flurry of moves before Monday's deadline, this team trims their opening night roster.
This one's so it could have been any of them, really.
That's the beauty of this game.
Yeah, I think I want to say that when Dallas was trimming their rosters during training camp, a lot of my coverage was more focused on their cap situations and their LTIR situations. So I'll guess St. Louis from last training camp.
That is correct. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch on October 9th, 2023. How this newspaper's hang on. I wrote this wrong. Basically, it's this newspaper's reporter, Matthew DeFranks, voted for the PHWA's midseason awards.
Okay, so this is only a thing for like 2 years, I think, with the PHWA. Professional hockey, PHW, yeah. And I want to say it was my 1 year in Florida, my first year in Dallas, or second year in Dallas. Because it hasn't happened in the last few years. And I don't really think I'd even write that now because I don't think anyone cares about how I voted for mid-season fake awards. But let's go with the Sun Sentinel. I don't know.
That is correct. Sun Sentinel on April 6th, 2019. This is a quote, "We're more determined. This team puts emphasis on skating in rebuilding 3rd and 4th lines."
Well, I mean, that was this summer. That was with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
That was a gimme. That was like, what, a month and a half ago? July 4th, 2024.
Not enough to forget that.
Yeah, that was 2 stories ago. Come on. Well, I think you only missed 3. That's not bad.
Okay. All right.
That's passing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, hey man, this has been awesome. Matthew, we've never had you on before. Make sure people you check out the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And I want to give you a moment here to make sure you let our audience know where they can find your work, how they can follow you on social media, if there's any deals going on right now, because Post-Dispatch is a paid subscription now. Anything that you could share right now that would help people find your work.
Yeah, just main thing is stltoday.com. Subscribe there. I'm sure there are some deals going on when I'm not logged into my account. I think I get a pop-up for a few bucks a month for an introductory period, and then so yeah, just that's the biggest thing is subscribe there. Me and Jeff Gordon have a podcast we do, Net Front Presence. I think that helps bring in some ad revenue there. So if you want to subscribe and listen there as well. Down the list would be Twitter at DeFranks, but the first 2 are much more important than that.
Yep, for sure. Matt DeFranks from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Read everything he has to say about the St. Louis Blues. Follow him on Twitter as he is constantly posting about the Blues, obviously. So thank you again very much, Matt. We might check in with you during the season, but we really appreciate you coming on and previewing the season with us.
Absolutely, it was fun.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank our new friend of the show, Matt DeFranks, for coming on. Very nice talking with him. Again, I had never spoken with him before when I was doing media stuff. He was probably still in college, so very cool to have Matt on, and hopefully we'll be able to have him on again. Very knowledgeable guy, understands the game, and love the way he writes and tells the story. So if you haven't seen anything from Matt, go check it out, stltoday.com. Next week, we are planning on doing a Mystery Hockey Theater, which means Kurt and Bill will be back. Stay tuned to us on social media, and we will alert you if that changes. But right now, that is the plan. So if you like those episodes, we are going to hopefully be doing one of those next week, probably Wednesday night. So make sure you're available for that. Join us live. They're a lot of fun live. I know the crowd that we get that watches the Facebook and the YouTube videos, they always enjoy them when they're live because they can comment with us and talk about the former games. So we'll figure out what game. We haven't done that yet, but that is on the way. So make sure you tune in next week. It's fun on the I've listened to the podcasted version before, and I'm surprised that I think it does kind of sound entertaining. I'll be honest, when we first started doing them, I think our podcast audience is going to hate this. But hearing the call still and then our commentary over it, it's still fun. I think it still provides a nice element. It's like dudes. The way that I think about it is you're sitting in a kind of a loud bar with the game on, and so you get the commentary, but you're a bunch of dudes sitting around talking about the game. That's kind of what I think about it with us sitting there watching, like we're sitting at a bar watching the game. So if you enjoy that thought, then definitely tune in. It's always a good time. All right, well, I think that'll do it. Support for Let's Go Blues Radio is brought to you in part by Mike Burgoyne from Rio Brokerage Realty. Email him at mike@strikewithmike.com today for all of your home buying and selling needs. That's mike@strikewithmike.com. And by Wolf Power Washing, St. Louis's premier power washing company with the best rates in town. Call Joe Wolf at 314-420-5434 and get the best looking and greatest power washer in the area. That's 314-420-5434. That will do it for the Ivan Barbashev episode 49 of season 13 of the original St. Louis Blues Hockey Podcast, Let's Go Blues Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great week, everyone. For Kurt Price and Bill Day, I'm Jeff Ponder, and I will talk with you next week. This was Let's Go Blues Radio. Until next time, everyone, let's go Blues. Training camp is here.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
You thought I was going to say, son of a bitch, didn't you?